So what does it truly mean to be a genius? When that word comes up, we often picture like Einstein, right? Wild hair, the whole deal. Or maybe some kid prodigy just effortlessly playing Mozart. But is that really it, or is that just sort of the tip of the iceberg? We're going to go way beyond that today. In this deep dive, we're peeling back the layers. We'll look at the history, the psychological side, the real challenges, the paradoxes even. And we'll even meet Gene, a hypothetical, maybe unrecognized genius, and ask, well, does that still count? Our mission really is to pull out the key nuggets from the sources you sent over. Think of it as a shortcut to getting smart about something pretty misunderstood. We'll hit you with some surprising facts, maybe a little humor, keep you hooked.
Yeah, and the sources we have are really quite something. We've got definitions, different angles on what genius can be, cultural stuff, psych insights, historical examples, and what I find really compelling, the actual lived experience, what it feels like inside. It's a pretty full picture.
Okay, so let's start right there. The definition. How do we actually nail down genius? Because it's clearly not just being super smart. The sources talk about exceptional aptitude, but that shows up in different ways.
Exactly. It's multifaceted. First, there's the one we usually think of, intellectual aptitude, high IQ, yeah, like over 140 sometimes, super fast problem solving, seeing patterns others just don't. But then critically, there's creative aptitude. It's not just having ideas, it's having ideas that are both new and valuable, seeing connections that are totally non-obvious, and finally, practical aptitude. This is about making things happen in the real world, taking insights and actually transforming something with them.
Right, so it's thinking, making, and doing. That's a key difference. Does that mean genius is always like across the board, good at everything? Or can it be super specific?
Great question. That gets us to domain-specific versus domain-general genius. Some people are incredibly focused. Think chess grandmasters. Their genius is deep but narrow. Or musical prodigy. Then you have the polymaths. Leonardo da Vinci is the go-to example, obviously. Painter, scientist, inventor, just brilliant in so many different areas. That's domain general.
Da Vinci definitely wore a lot of hats. Makes you wonder, though.
Yeah.
Is genius like a switch? You're either on or off? Or is it more of a sliding scale?
The sources really lean towards that sliding scale idea, a spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah, while some people clearly stand out, it's probably more accurate to see talent on a continuum, and genius is just way out there on the far, far end of the curve. It's less about crossing some line and more about being in that really rare, exceptional zone.
Thinking of it as a spectrum, not a cutoff, that changes things. It opens it up beyond just IQ scores, right? Suggests other dimensions. What else did the sources bring up?
Oh, absolutely. It's much richer. We talked about analytical genius breaking down complex problems, like a mathematician proving some intricate new theorem, methodical, deep. But then you have synthetic genius, almost the opposite, pulling together totally different ideas into something new and whole, an architect mixing art and engineering, maybe.
And it's not just theory, right? There's a practical side, too.
Definitely. That's practical genius, again, getting things done, implementing solutions, like an entrepreneur who just completely changes an industry. But it goes deeper into the human side, too. There's emotional genius, that profound insight into feelings, motivations, what makes people tick. Think of a poet who just nails the feeling of love or loss. And finally, maybe the most impactful kind sometimes, moral genius, people who lift our ethical sights, reshape values, like a powerful civil rights leader. It's a really broad canvas.
It's fascinating, too, how the idea of genius itself changes. It hasn't always meant the same thing, has it? Across time or cultures.
That's such a crucial point. The Western ideal, especially since the Renaissance, it's often been about that lone, brilliant individual, Michelangelo, Newton, these towering figures. But if you look at some Eastern views, the emphasis might be more on collective wisdom or spiritual insight, not so much the solo star.
So not always the lone wolf.
Not at all. And that leads to modern shifts. We're seeing much more recognition of collaborative genius. Teams whose combined brain power just blows away what any single person could do. Think about big science today. Genome projects, particle physics. It's massive teams, often global. The genius is almost in the network itself.
Okay, this is where I get really curious. What's it actually like inside? Forget the labels for a second. What are the traits, the habits, the feeling of being, like that?
The sources paint a pretty intense picture. First off, almost universally, deep curiosity, just this relentless need to know why, constant questioning. And that often fuels intense focus. Those flow states psychologists talk about, where hours just vanish, the world disappears, time gets weird, you're just completely locked in.
I think we've all felt flow sometimes, but maybe not that intensely. What else is typical?
Well, often there's extreme perfectionism and self-critique. Not just wanting to do well, but this almost compulsive drive to refine to get it perfect, even if perfect is impossible. And the paradox is this often goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud despite everything. Wild, isn't it?
Wow.
Another big one is tolerance for ambiguity. Being okay with not knowing, with uncertainty. That's where the really new ideas come from, right?
Mhm.
Not rushing for the easy answer. And maybe, obviously, nonconformity, a willingness to challenge the way things are done, to think differently, even if it makes you unpopular.
So it's not just a set of traits. It sounds like a whole emotional landscape. What kind of moments, what feelings are common?
Yeah, absolutely. You get those sudden aha moments, ideas just clicking into place, seemingly out of nowhere, super exhilarating. But then there's often profound alienation, feeling out of sync with other people, like you're speaking a different language sometimes, which can lead to big emotional highs and lows. The excitement of a breakthrough, but also deep, deep frustration with roadblocks or just not being understood. Some people even report sensory intensification, colors seem brighter, sounds sharper, patterns more vivid, a heightened awareness, and underlying it all, often this restlessness, a mind that just won't quit. Hard to turn off, always buzzing with ideas, internal chatter.
It definitely doesn't sound like it's all eureka moments and applause then. Sounds like there are real costs, some paradoxes baked in.
Oh, for sure. The gift can be heavy. There's the burden of expectation. Once you're labeled a genius, everyone's watching. Huge pressure.
Yeah.
Then there's that tension. Isolation versus collaboration. You need quiet time for deep work, but too much isolation. That can really take a toll on well-being.
And just having great ideas isn't enough.
Right.
Making them real is a whole other battle.
Exactly. That's the creativity versus execution problem. Your ideas might just outrun your ability or the world's ability to actually make them happen. And maybe the toughest part is being gifted but struggling. High ability doesn't make you immune to anxiety or depression or the weight of that perfectionism. It's often a hidden struggle beneath the surface.
Okay, so we've looked at what genius might be, what it feels like, the downsides. Now, the million-dollar question. What makes a genius? Is there a recipe? The sources seem to point to recurring themes, even in really different lives.
Yeah, no single recipe, unfortunately. It's a complex mix. First, you've got genetic and cognitive endowment, nature, basically. High fluid intelligence often shows up. And specific ways of thinking matter, too. Like Einstein apparently thought visually first, then did the math. Mozart's perfect pitch and memory from childhood. Some things seem innate.
So raw ability is part of it. But nurture, the environment, that's got to be huge, too.
Absolutely huge. Early environment and upbringing. Homes full of books, music, debate, curiosity. That really primes a young mind. And having supportive parents or mentors who spot that spark and fan it. Think of Bach's musical family or Marie Curie's tough academic mentor. It's not always about privilege either. Sometimes overcoming adversity, like Darwin's health issues, forcing him into solitary study, builds incredible focus and resilience.
I can see how the time and place you're born into would make a big difference, too. The whole cultural vibe.
Definitely. Historical and cultural context is key. Renaissance Italy fostered polymaths. The physics revolution in the early 20th century needed minds like Einstein's. Cultures that value risk-taking tend to celebrate genius more openly. And then there's education and apprenticeship. Deep immersion early on, Mozart composing at 5, Turing coding as a teen, learning directly from a master like Beethoven with Haydn or Rosalind Franklin getting specialized crystallography training. That accelerates everything.
So talent, environment. But you still got to put in the hours, right? The sheer hard work.
Undeniable. The 10,000-hour rule gets debated, but the core idea holds. Tons of focused practice is essential. That's deliberate practice and work ethic. Plus, that intense perfectionism we mentioned. Beyond that, key psychological traits. That burning curiosity, being okay with ambiguity, serious resilience and grit. Einstein's miracle year came after years of hitting walls. That's grit. And it's usually intrinsic motivation. Loving the work itself, not just chasing fame or money.
We tend to picture the lone genius, but it sounds like other people are often crucial too.
Very much so. Social networks and collaboration. Intellectual communities like the Solvay conferences for physicists spark ideas, getting honest feedback like Watson and Crick using Franklin's data. That's vital. And surprisingly, maybe adversity and constraint. Facing hardship like Turing's persecution or just having limited resources can force incredible creativity, making something out of nothing.
And then maybe just a bit of good luck, being in the right place at the right time.
Can't discount it. Serendipity and timing, meeting the right person, finding the right paper, a new technology emerging, luck, plays a role. Plus, cross-disciplinary fertilization, ideas jumping between fields. Da Vinci's art informing his anatomy, Feynman's drumming maybe influencing his physics lectures. These unexpected connections.
So, putting it all together, it's not one thing, it's this complicated web of factors.
That's exactly it. Nature, nurture, practice, mindset, network, timing. They all weave together. That's the scaffolding that lets rare talent blossom into something that really changes the world.
Okay, let's bring this right up to today. As you're listening, maybe you're thinking, hey, some of that sounds like me or someone you know. What if you feel like this? You have these traits, but, you're not famous. No Nobel Prize. Maybe never even took an IQ test. Are you still one?
Yeah.
Let's imagine someone, let's call him Gene. Gene embodies a lot of this, but no official label. So the question for you listening is, if Gene lives like a genius but isn't recognized, are they one?
Right. Picture Gene's week. It's probably a mix of insight, focus, and this constant hum of ideas. Maybe Gene wakes up super early, already puzzling out a problem from yesterday, grabs coffee, jots down some lightning notes on their phone, connecting something in the news to a project they're working on.
So the mind is just always firing,
Yeah.
even before breakfast.
Pretty much. Then maybe a solid block of deep work. Gene disappears into their messy home office whiteboards, prototypes everywhere, and just gets lost in it. Coding, sketching, writing, hours fly by, maybe a midday break, a walk with a friend. But Gene's mind is still half on that problem, maybe feeling a bit disconnected from the everyday chat, that isolation thing we talked about.
Yeah, that feeling of being out of sync, even with friends.
It can be. Then maybe a collaborative attempt. Gene shares some brilliant ideas in a brainstorm, but maybe they're met with polite confusion. Too abstract, too far out. That familiar sting of alienation. The afternoon lull isn't really a lull. Gene's mind jumps between projects, music, code, and essay running simulations, feeling that buzz of excitement mixed with a bit of self-doubt.
That emotional roller coaster again. It's just part of the daily fabric for Gene.
Seems like it. Then evening reflection, looking over notes, tinkering with ideas, maybe journaling about that rush of insight versus the frustration of not quite connecting. And maybe Gene wakes up at 3 a.m. with a totally new angle, has to scribble it down before falling back asleep, already thinking about tackling it tomorrow.
So what jumps out about Gene's journey, representing this kind of modern, maybe hidden genius?
You see these recurring stages. 1, daily sparks of insight, just constant little aha moments. 2, creation and alienation, making stuff but finding others don't quite get it yet. 3, those intense highs, lows, and frustrations. Big wins feel amazing, small setbacks feel crushing. 4, meta-awareness. Gene starts noticing this cycle, insight, create, alienate, doubt, new insight. And 5, that restless inner world, the mind just doesn't shut off, always experimenting, modeling, thinking.
So Gene's got no label, no awards. Maybe their best stuff is just sitting on a hard drive somewhere ahead of its time. It really pushes the question for us and for you listening. Is genius about fame, impact? Or is it the process itself? The curiosity, the pattern seeing, the drive? Gene lives it. Maybe today, real genius isn't always about the spotlight, but just the courage to keep thinking and creating no matter what. Gene's story makes you wonder, could there be way more geniuses out there than we think? And if, everyone is potentially a genius, does that word even mean anything anymore? Does it lose its punch?
It's a really tricky balance. Statistically, if you just look at IQ scores, the super high end, like 140 plus bear, is still rare, less than 0.5% of people. So by that measure, yeah, it's uncommon. But like you said, the sources strongly suggest there's a lot of hidden or unrecognized talent, people who have the potential but lack opportunity, resources, or maybe just the desire to pursue it publicly. Barriers exist.
And that collaborative aspect changes things too,
Yeah.
right? It's not always one person.
Yeah, absolutely. Modern breakthroughs often come from collaborative and distributed genius. Big teams, networks. Mapping the human genome wasn't one person's genius idea. It makes assigning the label way harder.
Okay, but if we say everyone has genius potential, doesn't that just water it down? If it's not special, what's the point of the word?
That's the risk, the dilution of the label. If every little creative spark gets called genius, yeah, the word loses its weight. It becomes kind of meaningless praise. Historically, genius meant talent plus major visible impact. Newton's laws, Mozart's music. If we shift the standard just to potential or fleeting moments, the meaning changes. Part of the power of the idea is its rarity, right? Geniuses change how we see the world. If that becomes ordinary, the concept itself needs rethinking.
So how do we square that? Is it all or nothing, or is there a middle ground?
Thinking of it as a spectrum, not a binary, seems way more useful. People exist on multiple scales: intellect, creativity, emotional insight, impact. Maybe the real takeaway isn't getting the genius label, but embracing the process over the title, cultivating those habits. Curiosity, resilience, deep work, ethical thinking. And cultural context shapes it too. Some cultures value quiet mastery and community good over individual fame. So yeah, while potential might be widespread, if we flatten the term completely, we lose what makes it potent, that rare combination of ability and world-altering impact.
That makes sense. Okay, so we have the recognized geniuses and maybe our unrecognized gene. But what about people who are clearly brilliant but don't change the world? Are they just average? And what if someone really is ahead of their time, but time just never catches up? Are they forgotten or
Yeah.
dismissed as crazy?
Yeah, these are great questions, often ignored. There are definitely figures who shine brightly but don't hit that world shaper mark. First, you have the unrecognized geniuses validated later. People like Gregor Mendel with genetics or Van Gogh. Their work was so different it took decades for the world to catch up and see the brilliance. Tesla, too, maybe. Dismissed as eccentric, then vindicated. Being ahead of your time means waiting for context.
So for them, time did catch up eventually. What about the brilliant ones who just aren't transformative?
Right. Think of a chess prodigy who never competes professionally, or a philosopher with amazing ideas confined to academia, never reaching a wider audience. Are they average? No way. Often highly intelligent. But by the traditional impact and legacy definition, they fall short. Then you have the self-proclaimed or false geniuses. Maybe persistent, even ingenious in their efforts, but their core ideas are flawed. Perpetual motion, phrenology. They might be convinced, but it doesn't hold up.
So what happens if history just never comes around for an unrecognized idea? If that context never clicks?
Yeah. Well, a few possibilities. The work might just be forgotten, lost in archives. The person might be labeled eccentric, maybe even crazy, their insights dismissed as delusions. Or they might become a cult figure, revered by a small group, but never breaking into the mainstream.
So what separates the forgotten from the eventually vindicated? What makes a difference?
It seems to boil down to a few things. Validity and rigor. The idea needs a solid foundation. Communication and timing. Getting the idea out there when people are ready to hear it. Perseverance and networking. Pushing the idea. Building support. And multifaceted impact. Affecting more than just a tiny niche. Being truly ahead of your time needs the vision, yes, but also a pathway for that vision to eventually land and be understood. Otherwise, brilliance can just fade away.
Wow. This has really opened up my thinking about genius. It's so much bigger and messier than I thought. But as we wrap up, the big question. So what? Why does any of this matter to us, day to day?
That's the crucial question. You can see genius as an external badge. The awards, the fame, the IQ number. That stuff opens doors, sure, but it's often about luck and cultural trends, too. It can be fleeting. But the deeper thing, maybe the real gift, is the internal journey. That feeling of discovery, the focus, the drive to create or solve, maybe the ethical weight of it. That journey has meaning. Whether anyone hands you a medal or not, if it was just about accolades, it'd be pretty shallow. But if it's about living with intense curiosity and creativity, that matters.
So it impacts the person living it and potentially society too.
Exactly. Individually recognizing your own genius traits, maybe you relate to Gene's flow states, or that restlessness can help you understand yourself better, find the right path, manage the challenges. Embracing those habits can change how you approach everything, and for society. Well, when those insights do connect with a need, they can genuinely reshape our world. Technology, art, social justice, and even the unheralded ones can inspire others just by showing what deep engagement looks like.
It feels like the real point is getting past the label itself, looking beyond that Einstein image.
I think so. So many meaningful lives involve quiet dedication, ingenuity, empathy teaching, healing, organizing, just making things work better in your own sphere. Those roles require brilliance too, just without the fancy label. Maybe the goal isn't to be a genius, but to cultivate those genius habits we talked about. Curiosity, focus, experimentation, empathy, wherever you are, whatever you do, that makes the whole idea less exclusive, more inspiring, really.
So in the end, maybe the real question isn't, does genius matter?
Uh-huh.
But how will you choose to matter?
Yeah.